Good morning or good afternoon, if that's appropriate for where you are. It's good to be doing another webinar with you. This will be our last one before the convention, and then it will be, our next one won't be until August. There are all kinds of conflicts. In July, the day we were going to do it is the day my son will actually be entering what is called the Missionary Training Center for our church and be going on his mission in July 11th. And so I'm not in a position to do a webinar there. It would be at the risk of my life with my sweetheart if I were to let anything imaginably interfere with that day. Anyhow, we are going to enjoy our time here today. And a little bit of introduction to this subject matter of how to exponentially increase your income. Each one of these things I'll discuss, and there are several of them, could be taken by itself and used to dramatically increase your income. If you combine two or three of them, that will just have that much more effect. But I've designed the subject matter with the thought that if you just took one of my suggestions, or overview, or more appropriately, it's an area you know that you need improvement either on a personal level or within your organization. Whoa, that jumped ahead. It's going to have a substantive impact on your bottom line. And so we'll take each one individually. Like I say, you may combine two or three of them. But none of this is theory, none of it's conjecture. If you do some of these things that we'll discuss, your income's going to increase, and you're going to like it. And so, with that thought in mind, let's go ahead to the first area. And before I do, I want to say this one might surprise you. You might not think of it as something that will dramatically or exponentially increase your income, but it will. Because the reason I know that is because when I got this right, when we got it is organizationally where we were doing a good job with this, and I can tell you I don't think we did a great job with any of these, but I think we did a good job with a number of them, and of course that allowed us to really have, just a wonderful, consistent, and increasing income throughout the 30 plus years of our career. So I want to pass some of this on to you, and hopefully you'll be able to grab hold of some things here and really improve your situation. So let's take it the first subject matter that I said that may surprise you. That's recommitting to prospect lists and referrals. It's interesting. Prospect lists is such a simple and straightforward proposition, and you wouldn't think people would struggle with this, but they do. As I travel and as I interact with leaders, it's amazing. I'll sometimes stand in front of a group in an office and say, okay, everybody pull out your current top 25. And they give me blank looks, especially if they've been in the business a little while. And the greatest obstacle to people calling and making contact and getting appointments is they get outside of their warm market. And then they look like this guy. In fact, I think this guy might be on my team. Anyway, but this guy, and I don't want to call. And the problem is they don't tell you that. They just don't call, or they hide from you, or stay away from the office. See how the picture says, the easy way goes this way, and the hard way goes this way. Anything but what I'm going to show you here is the hard way. First principle, always stay in a warm market. Always stay in a warm market. That means you've got to commit to getting prospect lists from people that you recruit, and you've got to commit to getting referrals from clients and centers of influence so that you can fulfill that first word that's on the screen there. Always stay in a warm market. Why? It's more fun. It's faster. It makes the business so much more enjoyable for everybody involved. It's tough enough with a warm market, right? But as far as I'm concerned, it's like hitting yourself in the head with a hammer to work with in a cold market. And there's that old saying, I think many have heard it, when a guy's hitting himself in the head with a hammer, a guy walks up to him and says, obviously, why are you hitting yourself in the head with a hammer? And the guy turns and looks at him and says, because it feels so good when I stop. So that might be the only reason to use a cold market, is it'll feel so good when you stop. And so I'm a huge believer in referrals, built my whole career on it, and the best list of referrals is a prospect list with a new teammate, because they're going to go with you to their referrals. They'll get on the phone and contact their referrals with you, and you've got to make sure that that's occurring. Now, one of the things that's a mistake that's made that I see, and this is one of the problems, as I mentioned, visiting offices, the prospect list is a lifetime commitment. It's not something you do at the beginning. For those use a 6-step thing, process and system, a way of describing it, you look at a step 1. Like step 1 is something once you're past it the first time, you're done with it. You never come back. Well, step 1 stays in your life all your career. Whatever you want to call it, you've got to maintain an inventory of people you're going to make contact with. The fact that I have a current top 25 list, which I do, makes it so much easier. I'm going to make some calls on it today, as a matter of fact. I've identified the next 6 people I want to call on it, and I'm going to make contact with them today, right? Me, at my level of my career, 33 years into it, making millions of dollars. I have a prospect list. I'm going to make calls on it today. Now, I guess that keeps any of you from being exempt, doesn't it? And so I have a lifetime commitment to a prospect list. I know I got to keep cultivating relationships, getting referrals, making sure we're getting them in the field, making sure we're doing a good job with prospect lists when we get a person on board. I'm talking about more of that in a second. I want to ask you a question. What's the current state of your list, and your team's list? And are you keeping up to date on this? Do you understand that if you would just have a prospect list party with your team, you might exponentially increase your income? Because all of a sudden, if you had 200 more places for people to contact, or 2,000, depending on the size of your team, what an extraordinary thing that can be. I remember getting the base together and just doing a current top 10. And then we challenge each other, everybody, to reach out to that top 10 over the next 5 days. We do it on a Tuesday night, and between there and Saturday night, we wanted to make contact with all those people. If I had 100 people from my base shop there and they all had a current top 10, that was 1,000 contacts in 5 days. And boy, did it create a lot of activity. Now, we did a good job talking about contact and all that. I'm actually going to come to that later in my conversations with you. But what is the current state of your list and team? Now, I want to make one point about doing a list. And it's a higher law point that is a mistake that sometimes, or it's just something that we omit. And so it's not a mistake that you commit, it's a mistake of omission. Now, what do I mean by that? And what am I talking about? I could sit down with somebody to do a prospect list, and I'm talking to them about, hey, here's the memory jogger, and hey, then we try and get it to be 100 names, and then we're going to take immediately the top 25, and these are the kind of people you want on it, and this is the kind of market we want to stay in. I'm going to come back to that point too. And, I give them that basic instruction, which is critical. They've got to have that basic instruction. But I call that lower law. It's kind of like operational excellence. It only takes you so far. In other words, if a person's struggling and they're not doing a good job with their list, you just can't keep going over the fact that, hey, here's a memory jogger. Hey, you got to have a top 25. Hey, you need it to be 100 names. Hey, these are the kind of people you want to put on it. Because it doesn't inspire. So let me contrast this with what I call the higher law of doing a prospect list. Now, picture I'm sitting down with you. Every one of you listening right now, it's just you and me, kneecap to kneecap. I'm looking you right in the eye and I say, look, as you work on this list, I want you to understand that each name you put on it will give each one of those families a chance to completely transform their life. Let's just look at it from a standpoint of what we do for people financially. Almost everybody, and realistically, everybody you're going to put on this list is over here financially, but they wish they were over here. And what we will have a chance to do for them by sitting down with them and giving them a little bit of a plan and saying, okay, here's where you are, here's where you want to be, and defining that and giving it a number, and then mapping out very clearly exactly what they need to do to get to that place and how powerful that all is. Now, the point I'm making is you start inspiring them about what we're going to do to change people's lives, to help them, to make such a dramatic impact on from where they are now to where we can take them. And then I'd relate something about your personal story, and that's something that I do. I said, don't underestimate how much of a change you might bring into these people's lives. I said, let me tell you mine. A friend of mine, a guy who played the music in our wedding, got a license, and he called me, and he's a full-time music teacher at a local high school. And he was starting part-time in this business, and he said, hey, and Cindy and I were newly married, a young couple, and he said, can I come over and talk about some of these things? And I said, well, okay, I knew he's a good guy, and so he came over, and he sat down, and he explained some things about protecting our family and my responsibility there, and then went through some things about the time value of money and compound interest and the rule of 72, and just went through some of these things that I'd never understood before. He's a high school music teacher. He's working part-time in the business. You guys, my friend, his name was Gordon. I think he was probably in the business about 7 months. That's all. I don't think he had a bunch of clients. I don't know if he had 10 or 15 or 20, but it was no more than that. But I was one of them. And you know why? Because he put my name down on the prospect list. And a few months later, and we were only saving $12 a month. Crazy, huh? But a few months later, I'm looking at the statement at $48 and a couple pennies of interest, and I'm thinking, well, maybe this isn't worth it. Some of you heard me tell this story, but here it is again, right? But then I started thinking about what he taught me about compound interest and what time meant and how I needed to keep doing it. And all of a sudden, I thought to myself, no, I don't need to stop doing this. I need to start saving more money. And so I talked with Cindy, and all we could squeeze was another $13, but now we're saving $25. You see, the power of what he taught me wasn't in the amount that I started saving. It's the fact that I started saving, and I started understanding why. I seem to have a little technical difficulty here, and we're not sure why, but we'll get it fixed while I'm talking. And so the reality of this is it completely changed our life. So all of a sudden, I started part-time in the business a few months later, and what happened? Well, we started saving a little bit more money, and then we started making some money and making more money, and we saved more money and more money, all because a part-time guy, a high school music teacher, came into our lives for the few months that he was in the business, put us down on the prospect list, came over and taught us some things, and it changed our lives forever, and it's still affecting our lives. Don't underestimate the power of a name and a prospect list. I also want you to understand some of these people you're putting down want more hope in their lives. They want opportunity. They want to get out of debt. They love to be more in control of their lives. They love to control the time. They love to drive their own income. And we're going to show them an opportunity that's unbelievable. And because because that guy put my name down on the list, he introduced me to the company a few months after he showed me the products. And I went down and said, wow, I'm going to give it a try. And Cindy supported me in it. And off we went. Now, how much does that change my life? I just want to pay off my Visa card and get a couch. We have no idea what's causing this challenge. It's interesting. So we'll do it. Some of these things are out of our control. We'll keep bringing it back up. We will fight the fight. For those of you on the phone, know what I'm talking about. We're having a computer challenge. So, bottom line to this whole deal, and if we don't get it fixed, well, I'm going to have to talk really fast around these pictures. We have other people somehow, I don't know if we're getting hacked or what's happening, but we have people coming in exercising some sort of control. A Dimitar Steakhoff. whoever the heck is that. If that guy's on this thing, and so is Raheem Ishmael. Great.
Right.
I remember that guy Ishmael. That was in Moby Dick. Anyway, hopefully we can keep control of it now. They asked for control. You need to click it off, I think, when we show that. Sorry, back to the main stream. So the difference, I don't want you to lose this feeling. The difference in how I just explained what happened to me because my name was put on the prospect list. What happens when other people hide because somebody puts them on a prospect list. Changes my enthusiasm for doing a prospect list. Now I want you to compare that in a lower law, higher law way. The lower law, hey, do you need to do a list? Here's how long it needs to be. Here's the kind of people you need to have on it. Here's a memory jogger. Here's the top 25 with some of the qualifications on it. Put down their names, addresses, and phone numbers. You got to tell them that, right? But that's lower law. It's not inspirational. In fact, when they start doing it, they start going, oh, not that guy. I'd be scared to talk to that guy. No, that guy probably wouldn't be interested. They turn it into an elimination list. But when you start getting excited about what and you've got to stay on top of it. Now, with this, when it comes to doubling recruiting in a particular area, you need to run a tight system. I'm actually in August going to spend some real good time on defining and clarifying that. If I say that to you and you're not clear enough on what that means, we're going to talk more about how to run a tight system. But as it relates to recruiting, I'm talking about a tight system around your contact method and your script method, so you're building confidence in your team about contact, which is an area. You also know that I'm an advocate of controlling the contact, which means leaders need to help new people make contact in their market. One of the most foolish things in the world is thinking your people can go out and set appointments and get people to a meeting or something just on their own, any more than you turn them loose to represent the products and services on their own, or you have them join and then do a BPM or a corporate overview. You don't do that because you want more experienced people helping them. Well, that's also every bit as true when it comes to making contact in their market. The only reason you don't do it is as a leader is because you're scared too. And you've got to understand how that goes. Now, with this, I'm also going to talk about fueling the machine. First and foremost, that means energy and enthusiasm. It means conviction and selling the dream. Look, that's the difference between higher law and lower law. Lower laws, everybody understands the machine. They understand contact. They got a script. They understand what they're supposed to say. They understand what to do before a meeting, during a meeting, after a meeting. They understand a follow-up interview. They understand how to get somebody in there. But people can know a lot, but not do a lot. The difference between knowing and doing is what I call, or the inspiration that moves people from knowing to doing what they know is what I call the higher law. And so I want you to understand fueling the machine is every bit as important as the machine. A car without gas is a lump of metal. It has great potential, but it doesn't go anywhere. Gas without the machine, a lot of energy, explosive power, but it's not something you can then get in and drive somewhere. It's the combination of the two things that make it remarkable. So I'll consider the car the lower law, the gas, the fuel, right, the thing that provides the energy that drives it is the higher law. We'll have other webinars on just that subject. But fueling the machine, what is the level of energy and enthusiasm on a personal level? What is it within your organization? Do you address it? Do you talk about it? Do you expect people to make an effort to be enthusiastic? Now, you want to fuel that enthusiasm and that energy. You be building the conviction about what we do for people and how we change lives in your team. And be fueling them with what they can hope for, what they want to have happen. I was in a follow-up interview, actually a BPM last night. I was talking to an individual after we were done. And we were talking about some of the things. I said, let me just ask you one question. I want you to go into the world of pretend. Use your imagination a little bit. I'm going to say you're doing this business. Why? Why are you going to do it? What do you really want to get out of it? What's going to be your motivation? Because if that's not there, then you just ought to become because he was already a client, you ought to just stay a client and leave it at that. And he started telling me what his dreams were and what he wanted more out of life and what he thought he needed to do to become happier and more satisfied in his work and all these kinds of things. That's what I was looking for. Now I start sharing my excitement with him about how those things could come true with this vehicle. And it energized him, and he left at a much higher level emotionally and a much greater commitment to go ahead and move forward in the business than if I hadn't had that kind of conversation with him. And so fueling the machine means fueling individuals, right, that will be running this business system. Contact confidence, a simple script to follow to help build that confidence. You help them make contact, show them how to do it. That increases their confidence and their competence. You run a tight system, you fuel the machine with a lot of energy, enthusiasm, a lot of conviction and selling the dream, and you'll double, your recruiting will increase. And the reality is that will have a huge impact on your income. Now let's talk about something else that has a huge impact on income. And that's the quality of recruit. That's a good looking recruit right there. And he was a funny cartoon character, but probably wouldn't be real good in the business. But let's take a look at it. Love the teeth, though. My teeth used to look like that. First thing we look for is character. Character, character, character. I was in conversation with some leaders, and we're talking about an individual, and they're talking about how they just couldn't quite put their finger on it, but the guy wasn't quite right and didn't quite connect with people and said things that were off color. And I said, guys, why are you searching for this? It's a character issue. If you think the guy's too far gone in character, you got to figure out some way probably to not have him be part of the business. If you think he's salvageable, the person has enough good quality, then you need to start having very straightforward conversations with them about the things that they need to change and why, and the principles that they live their lives by. And start talking to them about the principle of kindness, and start talking to them about integrity, and say, all these kinds of things. And I don't like to be doing a lot of that instruction, for people at our age, but the reality is sometimes we've got to do it. As we see less and less of it in the world, we've got to do this. Next thing, when it comes to quality of recruit, you've heard this before, but some of you were still not paying much attention to it. Number one factor after character is age, whether you like it or not. The younger the market is, the more trouble we have in terms of quality of business, people sticking to it, that kind of thing. Of course, there are exceptions to that, but there aren't many. And you can't pretend everybody's an exception, or you earn exceptionally low income. That's the problem with that kind of thinking. So character is number one, age is another, marital status is the next, and income and track record is the next. You look at those basic things, and we could throw home ownership and children and all those kinds of things on there too. All of those things have an impact. But these are the big ones right here. And if you're not paying attention to the quality recruit, you control this by prospect list. You control it by who you recruit. And I'm not talking about getting so elite you don't have anybody on your team. But I am talking about, first and foremost, not making exceptions on number one, ever, right, as best you can determine it. That's why I'm a huge fan of working by referrals, because there's always people that have known somebody for a while before they get in front of me and can vouch for who they are as a person. And so, but age and marital status, I want to make sure that our age stays up, and I want to make sure our marital status, there are lots and lots of married folks and committed people and people with deep roots in the organization. They've had some kind of track record of some success, and that gives us something to build on. There are millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of people in Canada and the United States that fit this profile. And that's where in other words, I can plant my seeds in fertile soil. I can plant it in barren soil. One gets me one kind of yield, another one gets me another kind of yield. And I don't need to be a farmer to know that. All right. Now let's look at the next thing that impact bottom line. So we've covered three things so far, right? Recommitting to prospect list and referrals. Talk about double recruiting in your base, super base. Talk about your quality recruits. Now another huge one, it's so straightforward, but it's huge in its impact on the organization, is getting new recruits started fast. You want to take a big jump start to your income? When you get somebody on board, you do everything you can to start people fast. You say, well, I don't think I understand how to start people fast. Well, how in the world can you be sitting around not knowing the answer to that question? You ought to be asking that of whoever you need to ask it of around you in your organization to get some kind of an idea. Just like if you didn't know what you wanted to say about the company, you better get with somebody who is, and then leaders, I challenge you to make sure you are teaching people, right, how to organize their thoughts before they make contact, and as they make contact, and two, how to get somebody started fast. So the goal is you try to start everyone fast. Okay, not complicated. Next concept, faster the better. Why? It is startling, surprising, sometimes stunning how the statistics improve in terms of someone staying in the business long term, earning money, really doing well, and tying it to just one factor, whether they got off to a fast start or not. Now, part of that is skewed by the fact that they were willing to get off to a fast start, and that's a sign, right, that someone's a winner. I mean, I've had people slow start and ultimately become prominent in the business. So I'm not talking about giving up on people. But the reality is you've got to try to start everyone fast. Because if you get them started, and by the way, first 2 weeks is crucial. Then the next 2 weeks, for the first 30 days is important. Then the next 30 days is important. Then the next 30 days. If you've not gotten them started at the very latest 90 days in the business, the failure rate is ridiculously high. Ridiculously high. Your retention is fractional. But if you can get them started and get them some success early, right, big things happen. Now, one of the greatest questions I ever heard suggested for this business was suggested by a guy who's really good at it, who's now serving a mission for his church, and that's Monty Holm. And Monty, one of the things Monty would teach was he'd ask a question in the follow-up interview right when a person is committing to come on board. And that question is, do you want weak leadership or strong leadership from me? Or if you want to ask the question in another way, you can say, do you want strong leadership from me or weak leadership from me? I don't care. However you ask that question, go ahead. The deal is, ask it. Get them thinking about it. Understand, we've had previous conversations about the difference between employee mentalities and entrepreneurial mentalities, and how almost everybody sitting in front of us is an employee mentality. Employee mentalities, as an overwhelmingly general rule, is to move slowly. There's not a huge energy level about getting things going fast. There's a methodical thing. In fact, I remember when I first started work, an employee situation, first place I took seriously, San Jose State, in the athletic department. I was gung-ho, fired up and all that stuff. And sitting next to me is my son-in-law, Trevor Thompson, and he went to work at Western Reserve. Some of you have heard of that company. And he was all fired up and was given assignments, to go do, and couldn't wait and all that kind of stuff. And he was fascinated by how many obstacles the other employees threw up, and how they didn't want to move fast, and how they didn't have any urgency, and which is exactly why I wanted him to go to work there, so that he could get that experience. And I don't know that Western Reserve isn't better at it than a lot of companies, but probably not much. It's just the nature of being an employee. Sorry if I offended anybody, if there are any Western Reserve people listening, but it's true. Anyway, employees tend to move slower. Entrepreneurs need to move fast. This stuff needs to be explained to people. Strong leadership shows them the way. And so getting new recruits started fast will really increase your retention. It will really increase the success level that they experience. And it will really, really impact your income. And so I just want you to hold this thought in mind, that getting new recruits started fast creates an amazing increase in success percentages. So, by the way, when you look at those two pictures, which one do you think is the employee? That, by the way, the car on the left was the Pontiac Azteca. Aztec, whatever it was. Arguably the ugliest car ever designed by Detroit. I think it single-handedly brought the demise of the Pontiac brand, right? They don't even make Pontiacs anymore. Part of the reason is how dumb that car. You know what? That's not even the ugliest angle. You should see the car from behind. Holy mackerel, that's an ugly car. And then look at this. Look at this Lamborghini. Wow. Now, which do you want your career to look like? Right? The Pontiac over there or the Lamborghini? I'm raising my hand to answer that question. Okay, I just picked me. I want to be the Lamborghini. I want to look like that. I want my career to look like that. I'm pointing at it in case you can't see me. And so, amazing increase in success percentages being the Lamborghini in this situation. Though, before you can afford it, you need to go ahead and buy the Pontiac. All things in their season. Some of you who know me well knew I was going to get that plug in too. Save your money. All right, let's talk about another area that can really impact your bottom line. Doubling, tripling, or quadrupling your licensing percentage. Doesn't matter how you say it. What it matters is how you do it. Here's a myth. And you say, I can't fast start people and license them at the same time. Wow, if you repeat that enough, it might become true. If you decide it's not true, then it won't be true. Never forget that. That principle applies to all kinds of things in life. But a lot of people in this business say, oh, I can't fast start a guy and license him at the same time. Now, which would I prefer? I want to fast start him. But I want to fast start him and have him working on getting a license. Because daggone it, I got to get people licensed. some of you have licensing percentages that should make you want to hit yourself in the head with a hammer. I mean, it's crazy how low some of these are. For some of you to double your licensing percentages would mean you go from like 5 per 100 to 10 per 100, or 7 per 100 to 14 per 100. But then you triple, you go to 21 per 100. I mean, that means you get 2 recruits out of 10 licensed? Come on. And so we at least got to be thinking that way and making that kind of effort. And that's the deal. You can, here's the truth, you can fast start and license at the same time. Will some people not allow you to fast start? Yeah. That's just, but you're trying to do that with everybody. But at least get them working on their licensing then. And continue to work with them on getting them started. Remembering the sand's going through the hourglass, and when it gets to 90 days, and you haven't gotten them going on something, gotten them some success, gotten a feel for how much good we do in the marketplace, made them a little bit of money, right? Or at least put them in a position to understand there's money to be made because they've seen the success of it, and they're just about to get their license. You've done them a great disservice. And and again, sometimes all you can do is all you can do. I got it. But here's the deal. If you increase your focus in this area, you're going to get major results to your bottom line. Major results. One of the ways you ought to be measuring your success level in the business, how many licensed people do I have in my base? How many do I have reporting to me? What is my goal between now and whatever, end of June, for the number of licensed people in my base shop or on my team if you're not an SMD yet? Well, you still have a base shop. Right? What's your goal, by the end of what? September. What's your goal by December? How many more licenses are you going to have in your organization? Fight for this. Focus on it. Increase your expectation of people to start and license. I mean, employees are going to give you all kinds of excuses. I got it. That's what you do. Right? But again, strong leadership or weak leadership? Which are you going to provide the people who are looking to you to show them the way? Strong leaders create expectations for people. Just like strong parents create expectations for their children. You don't have expectations, you're not going to be happy with the result. Mediocrity surrounds us, you guys. It's all around us. It's in companies, it's in government, it's in schools. It's all over the place. We breathe it in with our food, but it's like a poison, right? And so you've got to help people overcome that, right? And the antidote is focus. The antidote is expectation. Just like part of the antidote is building people a conviction and dreams. And so one of the things you can't forget, the whole key to getting more and more people licensed, as simple as it sounds, is increasing your communication, and especially your EPR. Now, I hope most of you know what EPR is. I hope there's somebody in the office that knows what EPR is can explain it to you if you don't know what it is, because this isn't a webinar on EPR. But the reality is, if you aren't encouraging and praising and recognizing your people, encourage everybody to get licensed all the time. Fight through the obstacles. Fight through the family responsibility. Fight through the work project you've got. Keep fighting through all of this stuff. And tell them you believe in them and how excited you are to have them licensed in our business and doing something. Recognize them when they get licensed. Recognize them when they create some activity in the field. Recognize them when they finish their hours if you're in a state that has hours like California is. But that's got to be personal communication, not just text, not email. When I talk about communication, I'm not talking about email blitzes or text blitzes. I'm not talking about tweeting or Facebooking. I'm talking about talking to people live. Got to hear your voice. And just like right now, I could mail this in, I guess, right? But it's live, and it changes the energy level of the webinar. Changes your response to it because we're live. Even though you can't see me, and I wish I was in front of you, and I could deliver that much more energy, but my communication, my EPR of people is what's going to move them forward toward these various results that we're looking for. You double, you triple, you quadruple your licensing percentage in your organization. You double, you triple, you quadruple the number of licensed people in your base. And just if you just focus on this one thing, you dramatically improve your income. You focused on that and double your recruiting. Wow. Why don't you double your recruiting and double, triple, quadruple your licensing percentage? Watch what that does for your business life. Watch how much fun you're going to have with that. You know, like I say, you throw some of this stuff in there and you're paying attention to your quality of recruit and you're working hard getting their lists. You know, you might be really, really excited about what's going to be happening for you. All right, let's look at the next one. To increase your income. They all came up here, so we'll cover them. You accelerate your leadership development. Now, first thing you got to focus on is building personal relationships with people. See, that is step one down there. The next thing you got to do is identify their virtues and strengths. All right, that's the next step. Then you got to give them quality instruction consistently. And then you challenge them regularly. And then you identify and separate. Let me take them one at a time. Building relationships. Age-old saying, nobody cares how much you know till they know how much you care. Just because you may have heard that 100 times doesn't change its validity, doesn't change its power, and if you aren't doing it, you knowing it academically but not doing it is doing you and your organization no good at all. Building relationships, letting them know who you are, being a friend to them, taking a personal interest, getting to know their family, right? Doing the things that people who care about people do. Making regular contact, giving them words of encouragement and praise, and recognition when they start to excel. These things build personal relationships. While you're doing that, you're identifying what their virtues are, what their strengths are. Why? Because you're going to talk to them about it all the time. You see, people are very aware of what they think their weaknesses and shortcomings are. For us to harp on those things will do nothing but break them down. And we're looking to build them. So you got to identify their virtues and their strengths and keep selling it on and keep telling them how much you believe in them because of those virtues, because of those strengths. And I'll tell you what, you might be the only person in their life that's doing that. You know, it'd be nice if you had 10 people on your team that were doing that with this person also. Other people were talking about how much they admired him for this reason and that reason, this, why you respected him for that and that and that, and just how proud you are to be associated with them because of all these things that they have about them. What an asset they are to the organization because of this, this, and this. That kind of conversation builds and accelerates leadership development. Now, the instruction is what I would call, but not all of it, lots of lower law stuff. You do need to organize your thoughts about how to contact somebody. You need to get an idea of what to do and what to say. You know, just like you need to come to understand what is your role in and around an introductory meeting, you know, of contributing to the energy level, and, you know, and you need to understand how to do a prospect list, the things we talk about, right? You got to understand how to do a presentation. You got to understand how to do a sales presentation. You got to understand how to do a follow-up interview. You got to understand how to close a sale. All these things need to be instructed. That builds their confidence. That gets them some success. But the lifting up of a person is more than giving them basic instruction. If all we had to do is give them basic instruction and have them sit in a classroom, we'd all be surrounded by leaders. But we're not. We never have enough. I was reflecting just yesterday, just in a moment, I was making some notes and just pondering some things as I looked out over the company. And one of the things that I identified, I want to know more about what's going on in leadership development underneath a bunch of our leaders. And as I looked at the very top of the company, there just aren't enough players for us to want to go. And so we're actively working on developing those people, the next wave and the next wave. Well, you've got to be doing the same thing. Now, challenging people is something that has to be done. If you're going to move people from employees to entrepreneurs, once in a while you're going to sit them down and say, hey, look, this is not going to get it done. You've got to step it up and start doing this. You've got to start playing at this level. And when people know you care about them, and you've been talking to them for months about virtues and strengths and giving them quality instruction, when you challenge them, they'll respond. I know, because that leaders did this for me. This is how I learned to do it, by what I was taught and by things that I was shown in terms of how my leadership changed my life. Now, when I say identify and separate, what I'm saying is you gotta identify those people that you think could really take a charge from you and pull them aside into a retreat or take them on an overnight or somewhere and spend a day or a day and a half really pouring it on with them. All right? That'll increase relationships, emphasize even more what you think their virtues and strengths are. There's instruction involved in that. There's challenging them, but you identify them and separate. They know, wow, I got handpicked. A whole bunch of people didn't qualify for this meeting, but I did. That elevates their thinking. And you've got to be doing those kinds of things. If you aren't, start doing it. It doesn't have to be elaborate. It doesn't have to be expensive. I'm not talking about a cruise. I'm not talking about going to someplace real high end, that you're going to the Four Seasons on the Big Island at Hualalai in Hawaii. I mean, you can do this at your house during a Saturday, right? As long as you're identifying them, separating them. If you can go a little bit away, change the scenery a little bit, it makes it that much more powerful. But it doesn't need to be expensive. What it does need to be is done. You need to do this stuff. If you don't have the resources, then you do it simple. I remember my first one, lifted out 4 people from my fledgling base shop and did a crash course with them on a Saturday, sitting in my rented townhouse in Mountain View, California, and at my kitchen table that I had to get an extra chair to sit 5 people at because I was the 5th. And I got results. I got results from 3 of them. Anyway, the other one moved out of town. I don't think it was because of the meeting, though. All right, let's look at the next thing. So you accelerate leadership development, you increase your income. Now think about this. What if you're doing all these things? I think you ought to pick the things you think you need to do most first. But I think you ought to keep this list around and kind of check out what you're doing in your business to make some of these things happen. All right, let's look at another one. You simplify and increase your sales training in your organization. I don't think you need to send them to Tom Hopkins, but I think that's all fine. I think there are lots of those good kind of professional sales trainers, some of that stuff, but some of that stuff gets complicated. I think you need to make sure that you have a standard sales presentation or sales presentations. You might have one for IUL and you have approved securities. We're talking about approved stuff, but you want to have standardized sales presentations. Anybody who understands our system and our model understands what a big deal this is. Right? And so you got to have standardized things. If you sit in an organization that doesn't have standardized sales presentations, then this leadership team needs to get together and put together what it is you're going to be doing. And so that it is standardized and it is duplicatable and it is simple. Don't complicate it. It'll lose the consumer and it'll lose our reps. So standard sales presentation. You want to increase your income? Then increase your close ratio and increase your quality of business. And one of the ways to do that is through client education with a needs analysis. This company has a free needs analysis. There are other ones some of you use, but I bet you there are a bunch of people within the sound of my voice right now that don't use a needs analysis. And so the client maybe doesn't have a clear enough picture on why they're getting what they're getting, the amount that they're getting, why they're putting the amount of money they're into it, both husband and wife, if that's right, the situation. Or a company, if you're talking to a company, people need to know what they're doing, why they're doing it, right, and how they're doing it. And the needs analysis connects those dots. And there's a level of professionalism, and I'm talking about it's simple and it's straightforward. And this is the game. I'm a huge believer in needs analysis. It's been one of the things that's kept my income and quality of business high. One precedes the other, quality of business and therefore my income high. Never did enjoy a chargeback. I wanted to diminish that influence as much as I could. And one of the ways I was able to do that is with good standardized sales presentations, right? The good needs analysis that we did for every client, put in the file. And then we would drill and practice. It's interesting. I'll use a military analogy here. I was reading a book. They did a movie about Navy SEALs, and it was Act of Valor. And I read the book. And one of the things that really stood out to me is how much these guys practice. They train and they train and they train and they train and they train. They go on a mission. They train and they train and then they go on a mission. They train and they train and they train and then they go on a mission. I mean, they train in it for every circumstance. And now that's life or death. And so it makes good sense that they do that kind of training. They've got to absolutely be able to rely on the person next to them, both sides, for everybody to fulfill their role, or people are going to die. So that's a good reason to practice. But I'm telling you, you've got to drill and practice probably more than you do. If you just stand up front, put it on a board, show it up in a PowerPoint, and do this kind of stuff, like if I were with you and we could drill and practice on some of these things, that'll be the most effective. And, I mean, having people square off and give each other the presentations helps get it squared away. Have them square off and practice, their contact, how they would set an appointment, how they would invite somebody down to the office to hear the company story. This stuff needs to be drilled. Drill. Expect people to drill. This is part of the effort. Now, the most effective is still field training. If I had a choice, I'm going to drill with you in the field as opposed to drill with you in the office. But I'm not going to have you in the office and just talk at you all the time. I want you to be drilling with somebody, practicing the things we're showing you. Now, next thing, you've got to build closers with conviction. If I could wave a wand, Harry Potter's wand, murmur some kind of incantation, and that was more than a movie or a book, right? And I think I could do that. Or some supplement I could have you all take that would give you conviction, you'd be astounded at how much your closing would improve. Some of you have conviction, but you don't really stop to think about how convicted you are about what we do, how important it is, how critical it is for families to get their act together here. You sit across the table from me, you feel my conviction. You stand in a meeting, you feel my conviction. You're on the phone with me, and you can feel my conviction about the power of our message, about the power of a plan, about the power of our products, about the power of saving money, the power of getting out of debt, the power of securing your future and having clarity. I'm a closer with conviction. So what does that make me? A good closer. Good closing isn't about technique anywhere near as much as it's about conviction. Technique is some lower law. I need to ask you some questions. I need to be watching you to see if you're getting the points I'm making. If not, I need to stop and say, do you have a question here? Is there something you're struggling with that you don't understand? And draw that stuff out, right? Because I look at people, if they're vacillating and they're not responding when I'm in a closed situation, I look them right in the eye and said, look at me a second. I just want to ask you a question. I found out there are only really two reasons people don't do business with us. As good as what we're doing is, and as much as they need it. And you need what we're talking about here. And so the issue is, do you not believe me or do you not trust me? And I'm going to get it out on the table. Well, you know why? I'm a closer with conviction. And I want them to address if they have some belief problems. I want to address if they have some trust problems for some reason. And because if I don't overcome that, I don't have anything. One, they're not going to buy, or if they do, they'll buy and then they'll drop it. So I'm not going to avoid it. I'm going to talk about it straight up. You know why? Have I said this before? I'm a closer with conviction. How many closers with conviction do you have in your organization? So these are good questions. What kind of contact confidence is in your organization? What kind of closer conviction is there in your organization? How do you build that? It's just by showing people what we do. I mean, day after day, we touch families' lives, and man, before they were going to have this much in their life, and 200,000, but because of what we're going to do, they're going to have 1.2 million. I mean, these kinds of things, instead of $1 million, they're going to end up with 3. I mean, I love this stuff. We took the no coverage. My daughter was talking with somebody who had a play date with a little girl that my granddaughter goes to school with in her preschool, and they were talking, and she was just asking her questions, and she knows what she's doing, and they're talking about their lives, and this mom was talking about how much her husband hated his work, and they were kind of hoping he'd get laid off. That's a heck of a thing. That's how much he doesn't like it. I won't tell you who he works for, but it's a national firm, and then my daughter asked, Well, do you have life insurance? No. And they got 2 little girls. You know, do you saving any money? No. I mean, this is the state of families, you know, and well, you know, it's cool. My daughter has conviction about those things. And so, you know what? They'll end up sitting down with them and helping them correct that situation. Now, another thing that will impact your income within what I call the sales area is just flat out communication with your client after a close. Keep them in the loop. If it's taking a little while to issue, if it were a policy, let them know what's going on. If it takes money a little while to transfer, let them know that this is kind of standard or where the issues are. And it will improve your submitted and issued ratio, and it will improve your quality of business. And all of these things, of course, hit your bottom line. But look at some of these things. I don't want to overwhelm you. We get an hour, and I've just got a few more minutes I'm going to talk. You know, but I want you to take each one of these areas and analyze it, you know, in terms of where your business is. Now, the last one I'm going to cover is the recognition and hero making. People are starved for recognition. Absolute truth, basic principle, people are starved for recognition. If you become a great recognizer, wonderful things are going to happen. I put these various kinds of candy at the bottom to emphasize, once again, just like pulling your team aside doesn't need to be a big, expensive process. It can be simple. So can recognition. I watched a guy I'd assigned to talk to at a weekend event, and he's going to be in front of about 150 leaders. And I'd assigned him the responsibility to talk about, you know, recognition as a principle and how to have a good recognition program. Now, the reason I assigned him the talk is because he wasn't very good at it. You assign people to talk for one or two reasons. They're good at it, and you want to show their strength. They're not that good at it, and nobody learns more than the teacher. Now, he was enough good at it that I could let him teach, right? But it was really for him, and he was a real promising guy, that I wanted to do it. He's walking out of his house, and he tells me a story afterwards, and he forgot that he was giving the talk. Yeah, that's what I was working with. And he thinks, oh my gosh, I'm going to give a talk on recognition. I was going to get him something to recognize him with, but I didn't go get him anything. And in his yard, he had that white shiny rock instead of a lawn. And he was in a rental, and he reached down, he grabbed some of these pieces of stone, this shiny white rock, and stuck 5, 6, 7 pieces in his pocket. And then he gets up there and he's talking. I'm watching him talk, and he understood the principle. But then he started doing something I never forgot. He said, I brought some special recognition with me. And he pulls one of these pieces of rock that he got out of his yard, right? And he says, look at this rock. It's white. White is a symbol of a lot of things. White's a symbol of cleanliness. It can be a sign of integrity. It can be a sign of purity, of strength of character. For this purpose, I'll say this white rock shining here in the light stands for all of those things. Blah, blah, blah. I mean, he's just pulling it out of his ear, or somewhere anyway. And so he's just talking, right? And I watched the crowd start to twitch. I'm watching these guys, almost all of whom are doing better in the business than this guy and making more money. And all of a sudden I realized the reason they were start twitching is they wondered if he was going to give them one. And he starts just randomly picking people, saying nice things about them, and handing them a piece of rock from his yard. And I was just amazed at how excited people were to get a piece of rock, to have him say those things, and how disappointed the other guys were when he ran out. You know, and I never forgot that lesson. Here were these leaders. We've been giving them recognition. Some have been in the business a few years. And here's this goofball who forgot he was going to give a talk, who picked up some rock from his yard and went and washed it off in the bathroom when he got to the hotel we were doing the meeting at, and started handing it out with just a good line, and everybody wanted a piece. Shoot, I wanted one. He didn't give me one. Dang, got it. And it still hurts my feelings. Anyway, the bottom line is people are starved for it. I want to give you a rule of thumb. Let's say you've got a team of 20 people. You should be recognizing 4 to 5 of them, 20 to 25% in any meeting you hold. It can be simple. It can be handing out boxes of Red Hots because they're hot on the team, or hot tamales because of the same reason, or 100 grand because they're starting to make money and you think they're going to be six-figure earners one day. Whatever it is, that's your rule of thumb. If you have 1,000 people, you need to be recognizing 200 to 250 of them. It does need to be expensive. It could be certificates. It could be stuff like this, but you need to do it. And I want you to be creative. I want you to have fun with this. I will never forget. This is back in 1986. That's how much I won't forget it. I decided I was going to do a recognition thing for our SMDs and the company I was in then. And I decided to go, Cindy and I went to Toys R Us, and we bought different toys and different things. And then we went to the craft store and bought little foundations, painted them gold, and super glued these different toys, these different wood foundations, and then typed a little title to it, and each one had its own title, and I just, a label, and put it on the base of the thing. And we did the most fun, humorous, enjoyable recognition program of my career. In fact, having said it, I need to do that again sometime somewhere. It was a fair amount of work putting together 50-some awards individually, but it was hilarious, the stuff that we did. And some of it was really meaningful. But I think I spent a couple $100, which was nothing. And yet the entire event was just, everybody had so much fun. Everybody was so uplifted and energized by the time we were done. It was amazing. And so you keep it in mind. Be fun, have fun, be creative. Doesn't need to be expensive. You don't need to be giving out doors, crystal this and gold that. There's a time and a place for that, and that's when you have the budget. But most of you don't. And so because you don't, you either spend too much and hurt yourself and even hurt the team by expectations because they haven't earned that kind of recognition yet, or you don't do it at all, which is worse, and you ought to be doing this kind of stuff and having a blast with it. I watched a guy go get red cups at Costco, spray them gold, buy little, like, toy soldiers. It was like a knight on a horse, and he glued it on there, and then he actually put some plaster of Paris inside the cup to give it weight, and handed out the things, and they looked great. And it didn't cost him hardly anything. I just have been, by the way, that was the same guy who got the rocks out of his yard. I just connected that dot. Hadn't thought about that in a while. So it does need to be costly, but you need to engage the leadership in recognizing your team, right? That's for you more senior leaders. You've got to make sure your leadership team is recognizing their organization. We've got to engage our leadership more in recognizing. One of my goals for everybody that's working on this business platform at WFG in the U.S. and Canada is to have this company and the leaders of it become much better this next year or two. And I realize it's probably going to be a 2-year project of getting us becoming really good at recognition and hero making. Really good. This is what changes lives. So there it is. People are starved for recognition. Have fun, be creative with it. Doesn't need to be costly. You got to engage your leadership more in recognizing your teammates. And any event you do, 20 to 25% of the people need to be recognized. That's the rule of thumb for being good at it and doing the numbers you ought to be doing. Before I go to the last page, I just want to emphasize one more time the power of recommitting to prospect list and referrals and becoming confident there, of doubling your recruiting through contact confidence and running a tight system and fueling the machine with more energy, conviction, and dreams. I want you to not ever take your eye off the quality of recruit and age and character and marital status and their track record and these things. I want you to stay focused on, this is one everybody needs to do for sure, getting a new recruit started fast. This will be a frustrating area because a lot of people insist on acting like employees for months before they start looking like the Lamborghini a little bit more in their career. But another area we can cause dramatic change in our business lives is doubling and tripling, quadrupling our licensing percentages. Then you accelerate leadership development, you simplify and increase the sales training. Then you do what we just talked about with recognition and hero making. And you're going to like the way your business looks, except for that part. Now we have one last slide to show you. We'll bring it back. I'm grateful that it waited this long before it did that again to us. And here we go. Bingo. And here's the next one. Next webinar, August 8th. Running the machine. See, a lot of your base shops look like that Pontiac Aztec, right? And I want your base shop to look like this, where it takes 2 semis just to take it down the road a piece. That's a great picture. Now I want to talk to you not only how to get your machine bigger, but how to run it in such a way that it'll get bigger. And we are going to emphasize that, and it's going to be simple and straightforward, and I think it'll be of use to you. And it'll emphasize a few of the areas that we emphasized in these slides today. Okay, I've gone long enough. We've taken an hour and 5 minutes. Thank you for being on it with me, and I'm excited to see you at the convention. That's a big deal and pretty awesome, and I will see you there, and I'm jacked about it. Good talking with you. I hope you got something useful out of this. If you didn't, it's because you were asleep. Thanks.